Tonight, the showdown over deportations. The Supreme Court blocking the White House from removing some Venezuelan migrants under the Alien Enemies Act. This holiday weekend, millions are on alert as severe weather rips across the nation's heartland and what we're learning about the suspect in the deadly Florida state shooting. First, at the last minute, the High Court wading into the deportations battle. 7 of the 9 justices granting an emergency request from the ACLU, temporarily halting the planned removals of hundreds of Venezuelan migrants to that notorious prison in El Salvador. So what happens next? As controversy grows over the fate of Kilmar Abrego Garcia, new details on his deportation status and his visit with Maryland Senator Chris Van Hollen as President Trump doubles down. Selina Wang from the White House. More than 30 million Americans on alert for severe weather across the central U.S. on a busy holiday travel weekend. The new flash flood concerns after days of heavy rain, strong winds, hail, and several reported tornadoes. Our weather team timing it all out. New details about the suspect in the deadly Florida State University shooting. A former teacher breaks down in tears, remembering the little boy in her 4th grade class. And one of the survivors taking her first steps, her determination as she faces a tough road ahead. The high-stakes meetings in Rome. The U.S. and Iran hold talks on the country's nuclear programs. Marcus Moore is there. 30 years later, the 168 victims of the Oklahoma City bombing are remembered. Still one of the worst acts of domestic terrorism in the United States. The new addition in Dodger blue, superstar Shohei Ohtani and his wife celebrate the birth of their first child. And the force is strong in Japan. 100,000 fans from 125 countries celebrating their love of Star Wars and some major announcements.
From ABC News World Headquarters in New York, this is World News Tonight.
Good evening. Thanks for joining us on this Saturday. I'm Whit Johnson. We'll have more on that dangerous weather alert impacting more than 30 million Americans on this busy holiday weekend in just a moment. But we do begin tonight with the showdown between the White House and the Supreme Court. In a rare overnight ruling, the nation's highest court temporarily blocking the deportation of dozens of Venezuelan migrants that the Trump administration alleges are gang members under a centuries-old wartime law. The White House blasting that decision in a statement to ABC News and expressing confidence that the deportation actions are lawful. This amid growing controversy over the removal of Kilmar Abrego Garcia, a Maryland man who was mistakenly sent to a notorious prison in El Salvador. ABC's senior White House correspondent Selina Wang leads us off from Washington.
Tonight, a late-night showdown between President Trump and the judiciary. The Supreme Court blocking the deportation of some Venezuelan migrants accused by the Trump administration of being gang members under the Alien Enemies Act, a centuries-old law that provides little to no due process. The highest court ruling overnight on an emergency appeal from the ACLU, directing the administration to pause the deportations until further order of this court. The ACLU's lead attorney says the migrants received this notice and were told they'd be removed in 12 to 24 hours.
We're talking about the administration hurrying people to the plane to send them to the Salvadoran prison without any due process whatsoever.
A White House spokesperson telling ABC News, "We are confident in the lawfulness of the administration's actions and in ultimately prevailing against an onslaught of meritless litigation brought by radical activists." The Trump administration first invoked the Alien Enemies Act in mid-March, deporting hundreds of Venezuelan migrants to Secot, a notorious maximum security prison in El Salvador. At the time, a federal judge ordered the Trump administration to stop the deportation flights, but they refused in apparent defiance of the order before a divided Supreme Court ultimately ruled they could continue. Among the deported, Kilmar Abrego Garcia, a father from Maryland who was mistakenly put on a plane.
He was traumatized by being at Secot and fearful of many of the prisoners in other cell blocks.
Maryland Senator Chris Van Hollen just returning from El Salvador after meeting Abrego Garcia, saying he has since been moved to a different detention center. The Trump administration insists Abrego Garcia is actually a violent member of the MS-13 gang, but he has no criminal convictions. His family denies the association, and the administration has provided no evidence to the courts. The president attempting to bolster the claim by posting this photo on social media of what he says is Abrego Garcia's hand. But the MS-13 symbols appear to be superimposed, and it's not clear if the other tattoos have any links to the gang. The White House says Abrego Garcia will not be returned home, despite the Supreme Court ordering them to facilitate his release. Tonight, Senator Van Hollen firing back with a challenge. It's time for them to put up or shut up in court rather than on social media. This is not about one man. We are standing up for everyone's right to due process under the Constitution. In Witt tonight, just moments ago, the Trump administration filed its response, asking the Supreme Court to lift its decision to block the administration's deportation of Venezuelan migrants in northern Texas. These legal battles are just beginning. Witt.
Selina Wang tonight, thank you. And tune into This Week tomorrow morning. Jonathan Karl talks with Senator Chris Van Hollen and Trump administration border czar Tom Homan about the latest standoff over those deportation orders. Now to the more than 30 million Americans on alert for dangerous weather over the Easter weekend. Multiple rounds of severe storms slamming parts of the plains and Midwest. Tornadoes, large hail, and damaging winds already reported in several states. This as millions are on the move for the busy holiday weekend. Here's ABC's Morgan Norwood.
Tonight, more than 30 million bracing for dangerous weather this Easter weekend. A multi-day stretch of severe storms slamming the central U.S., leaving a trail of destruction. Multiple reported tornadoes in Nebraska and Iowa. In some areas, wind gusts topping 80 miles per hour. Storm Lake, Iowa, now assessing significant damage. Trucks overturned and this building partially collapsed. Heavy rain and strong winds battering Lowell, Arkansas. North Texas now on alert for severe flooding as ominous storms light up the sky. After a dramatic week of twisters and hail in the heartland.
Holy smokes, every window's gone.
Millions of holiday travelers tonight bracing for possible delays and disruptions.
We're just learning of the storm right now. We like to travel and we're used to kind of dealing with whatever comes, and the kids are pretty resilient.
And what we're already starting to see thousands of flight delays, many of them out of Dallas, right where their severe storms are hitting. That's according to FlightAware. But look, with millions of Americans on the move tonight, there's concerns that the number of flight disruptions will only continue to grow. Whit.
Holiday travelers already feeling the impact. Morgan, thank you. Let's get right to meteorologist Danny Beckstrom with our New York station WABC. And Danny, more storms in the forecast for Easter Sunday.
Yes, Whit, the severe weather threat lasts through the holiday weekend in the same areas that have dealt with this for days. The slow-moving system brings wide-ranging impacts, with soaking rain and strong storms from Texas into the heartland and heavy snow in the Rockies impacting travel. The next round of severe storms fires up across the southern plains this evening, with the potential for dangerous, significant flash flooding overnight from North Texas into southern Missouri. By tomorrow afternoon, Easter plans could be impacted, with the greatest risk in Missouri and Arkansas, as a line of severe storms brings the threat for damaging wind and tornadoes, with the flash flood concerns continuing. While stormy weather could impact travel in the central U.S., it's a quiet Easter on both coasts, but turning more seasonable here in the Northeast after a very summer-like Saturday. Whit?
All right, Danny Beckstrom, thanks so much. Now to that deadly shooting at Florida State University, a community reeling and trying to heal after a gunman opened fire, killing 2 and injuring 6 others, gathering at a vigil to honor the lives lost. And tonight, new details coming in about the suspect. ABC's Faith Abubey reports from Tallahassee.
Tonight, as the Florida State University community recovers following these traumatic scenes on campus, questions swirling about a motive in the suspected shooter's past. Police say 20-year-old FSU student Phoenix Eichner was on a shooting rampage Thursday, leaving 6 people injured and 2 others, Robert Morales and Tiru Chaba, dead. The suspect awaiting charges, as court records from 2015 reveal, he had been on medication for several health and mental issues, including growth hormone disorder and ADHD. The details laid out in a years-long custody battle between his biological parents. The affidavit alleging his mother took him out of school to Norway for over 3 months.
I was his teacher the year he got abducted. When he came back to my classroom.
Gina Davison sharing these classroom photos.
The young suspect on the right. She tells us her heart breaks for the victims and the, quote, fragile boy turned accused shooter.
I look back and think, well, what more could I have done? You know, I mean, I'm sure everybody who's been associated in his life thinks the same thing.
Tonight, the surviving victims making strides in their recovery.
That's good.
Madison Askins, who just yesterday could not walk without getting sick, today making a lap around the ICU. The bullet still lodged in her vertebrae.
I'm not going to backtrack. I'm not going to let it tear me down.
And Whit, Madison is determined to show up for an internship she has lined up for the summer. She says nothing will stop her. As for the university, officials announced today that classes will resume on Monday. Whit.
Faith Abubey for us. Thank you. We move overseas now to the high-stakes nuclear talks between the U.S. and Iran. A second round of talks completed earlier today in Rome. A U.S. official saying, quote, "We made very good progress. Both sides expected to meet again soon." Here's ABC's Marcus Moore at the Vatican tonight.
Tonight, a second round of talks between the U.S. and Iran. American delegates arriving in a convoy to the Omani embassy in Rome, as the Trump administration seeks to curb Iran's advancing nuclear program. Today's meeting lasting 4 hours, U.S. officials saying in a statement they, quote, "made very good progress," adding that the two countries agreed to continue negotiations in the coming days. It comes a week after the two sides held separate talks in Oman, their first contact since President Trump returned to office. Just yesterday, the president repeated his vow that Iran will not develop nuclear weapons.
Some kind of civil nuclear program?
No impact whatsoever. I'm for stopping Iran, very simply, from having a nuclear weapon. They can't have a nuclear weapon.
In his first term, the president withdrew the U.S. from the existing nuclear deal brokered by the Obama administration. He has repeatedly threatened military action if an agreement isn't reached.
I think if these negotiations fall apart, then there will be military strikes against Iranian nuclear sites and possibly some other infrastructure on Iran, on Iranian soil, you know, water, electricity, oil facilities.
Marcus Moore joins us now. And Marcus, separately from that American delegation, Vice President J.D. Vance was also at the Vatican today.
Whit, that is right. Earlier today, Vice President Vance met with the Vatican's Secretary of State, his office saying they discussed religious faith and the Trump administration's vision for peace. But there's no indication that Vance met with Pope Francis. The Pope today did, however, make an unannounced appearance at St. Peter's Basilica, waving to the faithful. And, you know, his recent illness is preventing him from leading Easter Mass tomorrow. And while it appears the Pope and Vice President did not meet, the Vatican press office did release a statement on Vance's meeting with the Secretary of State, saying they exchanged opinions on difficult humanitarian situations, particularly involving migrants and refugees. Whit.
Marcus, thank you. Now to Russian President Vladimir Putin declaring an Easter ceasefire in Ukraine, but the Russian leader also warning that they would respond to Ukrainian attacks. Let's bring in ABC's Alex Perche. And Alex, how is Ukraine's President Zelensky responding to this 30-hour truce plan?
Hey, Whit, Ukrainian President Zelensky is responding with a healthy dose of skepticism to this Easter truce. In a statement tonight, Zelensky saying that this is yet another attempt by Putin to play with human lives. And he says that while some conflicts have quieted, they are still seeing Russian attacks. Russia has previously declared short truces like this, but they're largely seen as just good optics for the Kremlin. There is pressure to make progress on peace, as Secretary of State Marco Rubio indicated late this week that the U.S. was going to move on if Russia and Ukraine did not show signs of promise. U.S. envoy Steve Witkoff was in Moscow for possible ceasefire discussions just earlier this week. And tonight, Zelensky did say that if this truce holds, he proposes extending it further. The current ceasefire agreement is set to expire after the Easter holiday. Whit.
Alex Perche, thank you. Next tonight, protests against Trump administration policies continue across the country. People taking to the streets in New York, Washington, D.C., Raleigh, Denver, and other cities. Many demonstrating against federal layoffs and the immigration crackdown. It comes 2 weeks after thousands gathered for similar protests nationwide. And today marks the 30th anniversary of the Oklahoma City bombing. The names of the 168 people killed, including 19 children, were read aloud. Former President Bill Clinton among those honoring the lives lost and the survivors. It's considered one of the worst acts of domestic terrorism in the nation's history, destroying a 9-story federal building. And there is still much more ahead on World News Tonight this Saturday. A mass casualty incident on a Texas interstate. What authorities are saying about the cause. And Dodgers superstar Shohei Ohtani has a new achievement to celebrate. Next tonight, the number of measles cases in the U.S. continues to grow. More than 800 now, nearly triple the number in all of last year. Virginia, Louisiana, and Missouri reporting their first cases. 27 states now reporting measles infections. And today, the Virginia Department of Health also reporting the state's first measles case of the year. A mass casualty incident closing down part of Interstate 35 in Fort Worth, Texas. At least 21 people were hurt, some rushed to the hospital in critical condition. Officials say several motorcycles were involved. They believe one of the riders in the front of the pack blew a tire, causing a domino effect of collisions. When we come back, Shohei Ohtani and his wife and their little reason to celebrate. To the index now, investigators are on the scene of a deadly small plane crash in Nebraska overnight. All 3 people on board were killed when the plane went down in the Platte River near Fremont. First responders arriving on the scene just after the crash. The bodies of the victims have been recovered. The shot heard around the world remembered today on this 250th anniversary of the start of the Revolutionary War. Thousands watched a reenactment of the Battle of Lexington and Concord, which ended in a victory for the rebels against a much larger British force. And it's a girl. Dodgers superstar Shohei Ohtani and his wife welcoming their daughter into the world. Ohtani posting on Instagram thanking his wife, his team, the fans, along with all of the medical professionals. Ohtani is taking a short break. The Dodgers placing him on baseball's paternity list. The team is on the road in Texas. And a different way to celebrate the Easter holiday in Michigan. Instead of an egg hunt, children racing to grab marshmallows dropped from a helicopter in a park in the town of Trenton. It's an annual event. Children collect the marshmallows in order to win prizes. Colored marshmallows will get you an even bigger prize. Still ahead here, the force is with thousands of Star Wars fans from around the world gathering in Japan. Finally tonight, nearly 5 decades later, and the legend of Star Wars is still going strong. ABC's Eva Pilgrim is in Japan with some major announcements.
The force is strong here at Star Wars Celebration 2025 in Japan. Over 100,000 fans in attendance from 125 countries.
Where are you going next? Okay.
All here to share their love of Star Wars.
How does one fly with an R2-D2?
Check it in his baggage.
Ryan Gosling revealed as the lead in the next standalone Star Wars story, Starfighter.
It seems your mother sent us an image that she wanted to share with the fans. Can you explain what we're looking at here?
Yes. This is a picture that my mom sent of my bed sheets when I was 5.
Details are slim, but we know it will feature a new batch of characters and start shooting this fall to release Memorial Day weekend 2027, 50 years after the original Star Wars debuted, with Sean Levy directing.
All right, kid. Hang on.
The Mandalorian and Grogu taking center stage. Along with the brains behind the Disney Plus series turned feature film releasing next year, Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni are Star Wars royalty.
When you see all of this out here, the sort of love that they clearly have for the two of you.
And he walked on stage, and it was like Beyonce.
Well, maybe not Beyonce, but I
He
know
walked
these
on,
people. Yeah, I know
people
these
cheered. Every joke he made, they laughed.
And while the duo wouldn't say much about what we can expect, they did let slip a little casting news.
We can give an exclusive here. He's in the film.
Oh, really?
I'm in the film, and I wear this hat.
That childhood wonder out in full force here in Japan.
So much to look forward to. Our thanks to Eva Pilgrim for that report. I'm Wade Johnson in New York. I'll see you on GMA in the morning. Have a great night.
Thank you for making World News Tonight with David Muir, America's most watched newscast.